Greetings. Welcome to the Asana Kitchen podcast. I'm David Garrigues. And before we get started, just want to let you know started a 10-week course this past Sunday that you can still get in on so it's 10 talks on practical practice tips. And so it's a very successful first class, and this podcast has inspired it. And so if you could still join in on it, because you can listen to the recordings or participate live. It's every Sunday for 10 weeks, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can find out information on my website. So the subject today for this podcast is the connection between your creativity on the one hand and your pain on the other. And I'm just going to speak with you about how those are linked up and to some degree inseparable from each other. And so you could say your pain and your creativity are like reluctant friends or kind of arch enemies that are kind of locked in an internal and eternal struggle against each other, and kind of fated to struggle with that. They're the pair that. So first of all, we'll just talk about practice and pain for a few minutes. And so me, I'm no stranger to pain. In my long history of practicing, I can tell you that it seems that there's always some affliction or another that I'm dealing with. And I would say that by far the vast percent of it it's not coming from like me acting rashly or negligently or not from me making preventable mistakes. Okay? And this is partly the thrust of this podcast. It's just that affliction it's kind of an existential condition of life. And it's certainly the premise of yoga, that yoga, it's kind of starts from that just the whole proposition of being a human being and having a body and a personality and all the psychic things that we go through with our desires and our fears and our anxieties and our kind of projections into the past and future, and we can't stay in the present moment. And then also the fact that of constant change, that we live in the midst of constant change, right? All material. Human beings just resist that. We wish so ardently that we could freeze time and keep things the same, especially when they're good, right? So we're like kind of suffering beings. And then yoga also tells us that the main reason that we suffer, we have all those things that I just mentioned, but is the failure to understand our spiritual dimension and our interconnectedness with all life. So we get very invested in our individual bodies, our individual egos, and associate all of this temporary stuff with self. But really we transcend. Who we are is the entirety of existence as a kind of cosmic interconnected self, right? That everything in life is fully integrated, and we're part of that in a much greater way than our body. But we don't live that way. We don't think that way. We don't experience the world that way, and so we suffer. Okay, and so and yoga practice is specifically designed to at least lessen that suffering. So the fact that we come to the mat every day afflicted in some way or another with some kind of mental anguish, physical ailment, just is just a given. Okay, and so that's one thing to just kind of square on, that there's nothing unusual about that, or like nothing wrong with you. And it's your response to your afflictions that count and that matter. So it's an amazing thing all of its own then, that practice itself is, I think of it as an ancient healing system, like a natural medicine that has come from like almost aboriginal culture, right? That like that Hatha yoga is a branch of Ayurveda, like naturopathy is kind of the Western counterpart. And it's based on like that the body itself is the means of healing sickness, not some external prescriptions or remedies. Like that, it's more of an internal process that you create your health through your diet and through the way you live and through Hatha yoga. And this is partly like a positive response, like that you have a discipline that brings you preventative medicine so that you don't get sick, you don't get afflicted, but it also addresses afflictions, like helps you meet your afflictions with more grace, more skill, more knowledge, and also can lessen and cut away unnecessary suffering. And then it's also a way for you to bear your suffering and to endure or tolerate and accept and bring compassion to it, and also humor. And this is the Yoga Sutras, the yoga texts all back this up. And so in the section in the Yoga Sutras on afflictions, the 5 root causes of pain, called kleshas, they list out those kleshas, and they kind of go through defining those, and at the end of the section, they conclude that to the real observer, okay, when you really look inside yourself at kind of what is happening, there's this kind of constant affliction because of what they call is basically samskara, which means a groove or a habit or a kind of conditioned response that we have that's resistant to constant change. And so that's all to say that that coming with pain is natural to practice. And, but also having strategies for your pain is also necessary. Even though those strategies will not necessarily take away all of your pain. And you don't necessarily want to get rid of all your pain. And this is the kind of crux of this podcast. Because your pain and your creativity are so linked up together. And I'm going to read you this line from a Kabir poem that's quite amazing. And because it's talking about desire. See, and so there's this need for a certain amount of restlessness, a certain amount of hunger, certain desire that burns within you to have a creative spark and to keep propelling you forward and asking of yourself to grow, or meeting the universe's demand that you grow. So part of the idea of that things constantly change and and don't stay the same, it's part of life because basically complacency, to stay the same, is to head into ailment or affliction. So complacency is like the beginning of unwellness and sickness. And Kabir it's just such an amazing line. And he just says, it comes at the end of this poem and just says it straight out. Do you believe there is some place that will make the soul less thirsty? Do you believe there's some place that will make the soul, your soul, less thirsty? In that great absence, you will find nothing. Okay, so in the absence of that thirst, that your desire, you'll find nothing. Okay, and so this is such an interesting, very deep reality that can help you so much in your practice and beyond your prayer rug, out into your life. If you think of your desire and the restlessness and the dissatisfaction that you have and the challenges that you come across as very positive thing and also very natural. It's interesting that it's a little bit on the humorous side, but what I'm going to tell you next, but it's also very serious in a way. In this text, it's called Classical Samkhya. It's by Gerald James Larson. So it's a book that goes into the philosophy that's behind the Yoga Sutras, and it has this. It's a very Samkhya. For one thing, it means to enumerate. So the philosophy has a lot of categories. So it's where the 25 categories of reality come from. Like Purusha and Prakriti are the first two, the spirit versus the matter. And its premise is that all is suffering and that yoga is your answer to suffering. And so it lists the types of, or the types of affliction. And it really goes into detail. And so it says there's 5 varieties of ignorance, which we've said there's these 5 kleshas. And then there's 28 varieties of incapacity. And there's 9 complacencies. Okay, and then it goes on to, there's even more of them. It's like these lists of, there's 8 varieties of obscurity and darkness, and 10 kinds of extreme. Excuse me. There are 8 varieties of obscurity and delusion, and 10 kinds of extreme delusion. So it wasn't enough that there's 8 kinds of delusion. There's 10 kinds of extreme delusion. And then lastly, gloom and utter darkness are 18-fold. And what's funny to me about it is the whole listing out, in that it's very precise. There's 18 gloom and utter darkness, not 19 or 17, right? But also, it's amazing we can be kind of affliction-generating machines as human beings, and each one of us individually has our own ways that we do it. We kind of go into darkness, and in that there was the 9 complacencies. So to me, there's this balance you're looking for that we rarely get, and in practice and in our endeavors in life, so the creativity. See, and when I use the word creativity, I use it like the Yoga Vasishta, which is a little more broad than how we ordinarily think of the word. Because creativity in the Yoga Vasishta, it's almost, it's like the word karma. So it means work, basically, that your work. And to me, it means both. It means just simply work, like the work that you do for your job or the working on a relationship. And then it also means creativity. And that those two are one and the same. So the work that you do on a relationship, the work that you do out in the world, whether it's a barista or an usher for the symphony or a symphony player, whatever it is, it's work and it's creativity. Okay, and so we're constantly trying to find this balance or this middle path. So it says in that Kabir, it's saying, do you think there's a place that will make the soul less thirsty? In that great absence, you'll find nothing. And so there's a certain drive that we need, and in order to go into the unknown, and because that's where the creativity is. It's in understanding that things are constantly changing, and that where we're at our best is when we're risking and growing and probing where we haven't probed before, in practice and in life. But this is where, when you probe into the unknown and you risk, especially when you've got a big thirst behind what you're doing, like trying to do a hard pose, or, right, as a small example, you can get hurt, you can fail, you can fall down and bang your knee, or whatever it is, right? That affliction can come by being too extreme, and being like kind of too strung out with desire, right? And it's amazing how in the Yoga Sutras the desire is used as a very positive word. So it's called ananda, and it's one of the ways that you create samadhi, or the eighth limb of riveting your mind in the present moment, is through bliss. Okay, and you're seeking that, following what lights your fire with passion, right? But at the same time, then desire or attachment to pleasure is called raga. It's one of the 5 ignorances, one of the 5 root causes of pain. So then, suppose that you feel that you've probed, your desire to get a pose or to excel in your work is gone too far. It's flipped over into raga, into this deep attachment that causes you to act out, to make your action unskillful. And then you back off. And it's very natural to back off of action or creativity or work when you meet with failure and you get pain from your failure. We can become shell-shocked and afraid to act. And this is where those complacencies, the 9 complacencies come, where we all of a sudden become afraid of action, afraid to jump in, and we hold back. And so I don't know what those 9 complacencies specifically are in classical Samkhya, but I know my own list, and you want to know yours. Like, what are the ways that you kind of just maintain the status quo within yourself, where you're not probing into the unknown, you're not requiring yourself to grow, and kind of pushing and listening or following the desires that you have. Because when you fall into this complacency, this is its own form of suffering. This is your own way of injuring yourself that's just as damaging or harmful to you as when you overdo and act too extremely or too rashly or with too much attachment, right? So you're constantly trying to find this balance in negotiating your desire and associating that with your creativity. So it's a very physical thing in a way, and that I want to talk to you about for a moment. Or let me put it this way. I find it very helpful to see the pain on 3 levels. Okay, and there is a physical, mental or psychological, and spiritual. And in reality, they're all connected, right? That pain can never be entirely physical or entirely spiritual. But it's a very helpful model to kind of observe. You see, and I would say that out of those 3 levels of pain, it seems we spend more time in the physical pain realm. It's a little bit of a generalization, but right, that when our shoulder hurts, our knee hurts, we have back pain, whatever it is, we're very concerned, and we're also very physically concerned. And we don't necessarily readily jump to a kind of mental or a spiritual kind of depth with that pain. We would love it if we could just, rotate our leg differently, or right, do some little different physical thing, and then that's the end of it, right? But what we find is that is not what happens. See, like we often get these mysterious pains, and pains that they're not very logical, or they don't respond to logic very easily, and they can be recurring, or they can either kind of come up and then go away and then come back, or they can just behave in quite willy-nilly, where it's hard to pinpoint what the cause is, or even how to work with it. And so, to me, it's very helpful to kind of go to these deeper dimensions, even when you have a physical pain, is to try to understand it from a mental point of view, and to try to understand it from a spiritual point of view. And especially the types of pains that we get that are recurring, or that we find really difficult to drop. And this is, to me, this is very tied to our creativity. But I'm going to talk to you on the physical level for just a little bit longer about this, and point you to this. He died a few years back, but is a doctor named Dr. John Sarno, and he has books that I recommend. And like one, I think his first one was Mind Over Back Pain. And so here he was a very kind of almost ostracized and rebel MD in New York, had a long career in New York, because he basically observed that he went way out on a limb and determined that most back pain, okay, not all, but most back pain, his scientific conclusion and his experience as a doctor told him that was not based on a structural damage. And he goes down the list of very kind of structural back pain, common structural back pain problems, and just said that was not the problem, and what he called it TMS, what the problem was, and which is, and it's basically tension. Tension, it's kind of muscular tension is at the root of it, and it was very, and the type of person that, so the people that would come to him, right, would sound like a lot of us that do yoga. Like he often called it like there'd be a triggering thing. Like I was playing tennis and I went for a big move and whoop, I felt this tweak, or I was gardening and I bent over and there was this tweak. And most of us have a yoga story like that, right? I was lunging into Warrior II, or I was coming up out of Janu Shirshasana and I felt this twinge, and then here I am incapacitated, right? And But he was saying that this is, it's not like, he's radical, right? He's saying it's not a bulging disc necessarily, or stenosis, or these common diagnoses. That it's actually this deep-seated tension. You see, and he really points out that it's not tension that you can relieve by relaxation techniques, by massage necessarily, or by yoga or acupuncture, because, and this is what's so amazing to me about Dr. Sarno's work, is that it's a deeper tension, which has to do with your desire. And he talked about people that are driven and also people that are nervous or anxious were prone to this kind of presenting symptoms that seem like potential structural damage, but really is this deep-seated tension. And what's really curious about Sarno's work was that he's saying that the remedy is not actually to relax, because it's too deep, this tension, and it's too kind of part of your whole makeup, which to me lines up with the type of desire that Kabir is talking about. So it's like a soul desire. It's like this thirst that you have for meaning, and it's like a very, very deep longing within us that's making up the tension of our life, and that we have to address it at a very deep level. And so Sarno, as a doctor, his treatment, he had a course of treatment for his patients, and there was like physical therapy as part of it, but for him, that was just to give the person confidence in their body. But his main treatment was simply to know, okay? And I love that. So that it's like you just know that when you have these pains that come up, just out of the blue, or recurring or chronic, that it's basically this very deep tension. And it's just that. And that very knowledge, if it penetrates through deeply to you, to your consciousness, will relieve that pain, will lessen it or remove it. So it's quite, and to me it's quite in keeping with the yoga. And there's another Kabir poem I want to read to you that's kind of hinting at the idea of this, the deep longing. See, this is what we have to try to get in touch with when we practice, and to make sure that somehow we are honoring our deepest desires, that we're like fulfilling our vision for what is a meaningful life for us. Okay, and so in this poem, it's like it's a girl speaking, a woman, and so she goes. I mean, it's Kabir writing it, but it's like from the perspective of a woman. So he goes, I played for 10 years with the girls my own age, but now I'm suddenly in fear. And I'm on the way up some stairs. They are high. And yet, okay, so I played for 10 years with the girls my own age, but now I'm suddenly in fear. I am on the way up some stairs. They are high. And yet I have to give up my fears if I want to take part in this love. I have to give up my fears if I want to take part in this love. I have to let go of the protective clothes and meet him with the full length of my body. And him is like the friend or the self, the God or the divine, the highest principle. So I have to let go of the protective clothes and meet him with the whole length of my body. All of me has to get involved. Okay, my eyes will have to be the love candles this time. So I have to let go of the protective clothes and meet him with the whole length of my body. My eyes will have to be the love candles this time. Kabir says, men and women in love will understand this poem. And then here it is. If what you feel for the Holy One is not desire, then what's the use of dressing with such care and spending so much time making your eyelids dark? See, I love that poetic idea that, I just love that. If what you feel for the Holy One is not desire. See, and what he's saying is it is desire. That our deepest seated longing is desire. And we've got to have to give up our fears if we want to take part in this love. And if we want to lessen our suffering. See, this is so challenging, right? And that I have to let go of the protective clothes. All these things, things about me, that these complacent things, these things that I hold on to so carefully about myself. And I become unwilling to take a chance to go into the unknown and learn and grow and be a further kind of expansions of self. I have to let go of the protective clothes and meet him with the full length of my body. Get all in. I love that. And then one more poem by Mira, who was a wonderful poetess, and that was from a little girl. She felt she was married to Krishna, God. And so here she's talking to him, actually, right to Krishna, just addressing him, like in a cry of anguish. She's saying, "Where did you go, Holy One, after you left my body?" Yeah, where did you go, Holy One, after you left my body? Your flame jumped to the wick, and then you disappeared and left the lamp alone. Love that. Your flame, so this kind of inner spark, this fire for life, jumped to the wick within me. And then you disappeared and left the lamp alone, this lamp of a body. And then you put the boat into the surf and then walked inland, leaving the boat in the ocean of parting. Oh, and Mira says, "Tell me, when will you come to meet me?" See, I love that. She's like honoring that longing, turning it into poetry. Okay, and then last, this beautiful line from the Yoga Vasishta that I want to share with you. And remember that really it's an interesting podcast, huh? And it's really talking about this connection between your pain, your longing, your deep burning, and your creativity, and how these two are fierce opponents that are also allies somehow. And so it says, this from the Yoga Vasishta, amazing text. It says, the power of creativity. Okay, the power of creativity. And so remember, this has a triple application. It's the power to act. The power of creativity is the power to act, to take action in this moment. It's work, the power to work. And it's the power to be creative. So the power of creativity is always found through logic, okay, and by facing experience. Okay, and that's the first half of the line. Okay, and I'm just going to speak to you about that before I give you the kicker, all right? Because both of those statements are so important for practice and for going beyond the prayer rug. Okay, so this power to act, the power to create, to work, is always found through logic. Okay, and this is so true of Hatha Yoga. Okay, it's very logical, and when I teach you, I'm training you to be logical. Like the whole idea of yantra, right? That you're making geometrical shapes, and that it's based on math and logic, and you really are working in this as logically as possible. And it's funny to me that even John Sarno, Dr. Sarno, that his way of approaching pain is very logical, even though on the surface it looks like a witch doctor or something like woo-woo. But if you really read his work and understand what he's saying, to him, he's applying logic to the subject of pain, which is like, it brings out such illogic in us, brings out so much emotion in us, and makes it so hard to think logically, right? And we know it, how afraid we get around our pain, and how when pain comes up, we think, oh no, I'll never be able to do a forward bend, I'll never be able to do a back bend again, right? Even though the pain, time and again, these pains come and go, and yet we kind of fall into kind of irrational responses to them. So, the power to act, the power to work, the power of creativity is found through logic. So just becoming more of a scientist, right? So when your response to pain whenever you have it, on the mat, in a relationship moment, in a work moment, in a social moment, is to try to understand, not judge. Pain's so fast, we're so fast to judge pain. But you're going to be more logical, more scientific, more trying to understand that pain. And then also, I love that, by facing experience. See, we get pain, just like the very premise of yoga, that we're acting as though we are this individual body and this individual ego. And so, but really the reality is that we're greater than that. That we have a whole dimension of self that's well beyond the little body and mind that we are. And so we've got to learn to face experience, like head on. And like that's the spirit of that Kabir poem. I've got to meet him with the full length of my body. I've got to be right here all the way. Okay, and then we find the power to act. We find the power of our creativity. And then here's the next line in the little thing, which goes, the speaker is heard, not the one who remains silent. It's just that simple. The speaker is heard, not the one that remains silent. So if you want to take part in this love, in creating this world and really being part of it, you've got to walk up those stairs even though they're high. You've got to keep pushing into the unknown, because it's the person that speaks. It's the one that honors their desire and takes a chance and doesn't fall into the varying forms of complacency. That one is heard, whereas not the one who remains silent. So we have to dance the dance and listen carefully to our pain and see, and through logic and through facing experience, and then win the power to act, to work, and to be creative. All right, so there you have it. I hope you enjoy this subject as much as I do, and I'm so happy to be able to speak with you and share this with you. And so if you want to join in on the course, it's not too late. It's called Practical Practice Talks. You can find information on my website. It's 10 talks on kind of practical practice tips. And every Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can be there live, or you can catch the recorded version. Okay, so all the best. Namaste.